Hello, everyone, and welcome to Literary Nights with Unsolicited Press. Tonight we have Savannah Cooper with us, and we are going to hear her read her work, and we're going to have a discussion after. But before we begin, I want to remind everyone to smash the like button and follow us and heart us. And also, I wanted to let everyone know that if you have a comment or a question for Savannah, you can actually put it in the comments section from wherever you're watching, and we will see it in real time and be able to answer. So, welcome everyone, and thank you, Savannah, for being here. So, tell me
Thank
about
you
your
for
book.
having me.
Paper?
Yes, it is a collection of my poetry, really written over the last 5 years, especially starting during the pandemic. Just went through a lot of personal trauma in addition to the pandemic trauma that everybody was going through. I was actually expecting a baby at the time, and
Oh, my.
yeah, and it just didn't work out. I ended up having an abortion, and yeah, it was just not a fun year. But poetry was my way of processing everything and dealing with a lot of big feelings. And so this book kind of explores my whole life up to that point, from growing up in Missouri and as a preacher's kid to dealing with that trauma and just like figuring out who I am at the ripe old age of 30 at the time. So,
Well, we're very, very excited to hear you read your poetry. Poetry is always inspiring, especially to people who write prose, because the point of view and the persona narrator and stuff. Poetry compacts a lot in a little space.
that's
So, start reading. We're here to listen.
all right, for sure. I have a few different poems, so I'll just kind of explain them a little bit as I go, if that's okay. The first poem I'm going to read is called Center, and is actually about my grandmother's house and my grandmother, who I spent a lot of time with growing up and who helped raise me. All right, so Center. I dream only of one house, my grandmother's, the blue carpet of her front porch, peeling white paint on the railing, chain link fence leaning into the alley. You get one life, one center, base in a spontaneous game of tag, the slide top where metal burns or pinches, leaves a mark, flowers she tends until she can't. A succession of dogs in black, gray, brown commandeer the same worn chair just outside the entryway. Last chance to turn around and pretend the key didn't fit. Her body, her scent, furniture scattered to God knows where, a box of old magazines, zebras striped with gold. Circle back each night, find the holes in each chain. The next one I'm going to read, kind of in that same section about growing up in Missouri, is about a very close friendship I had that kind of ended and faded away. So this is And Now the Moon is Rust. Gray snow crushed against the curb, an extinguished sparkler in a tin bucket. I'm no good with endings. We touch something cold and sharp in each other, so maybe this is best. A quiet exit. No lights ringing the stage, no voices murmuring in the back of a crowded bar. We never did share a bottle of wine, but you sip my Long Island before stepping into late October streets. The claws of a cat ticking along the windowsill, your voice somewhere between glitter and starlight. I take nothing back, not a second. Close my eyes and count slowly to 7. I walked deep in caves where daylight choked and died, thought of rock slides and trap miners, saw no difference between the dark behind my eyelids and the world around. But I heard your laugh, the way it cut through stagnant air. We slept on the living room floor of someone else's apartment, and woke to stumble through the woods like lost boys, strange and kindred. We found something in spring, resurrected in fall, and it lit the sky. Let's see. This next piece is called Ghost Stories, and it's actually about my mother and just my experience growing up. Ghost Stories. I slept with the lights on, afraid to glimpse shadows of dead men stretching across the wall. My mind populated my childhood bedroom with staring eyes, hunched figures, quiet shuffle of uncertain feet. My father told me ghosts were just demons in disguise. My mother collected stories of the unexplained like postage stamps. When he was out of town, I slept in her bed beside her, hushed and warm, as she told me of spirits she'd glimpsed, faceless shades and gray figures cutting through the room, the smell of smoke when her sister died 200 miles away, her father coming to her mother's bedroom window years after he was gone. We lived two lives, one when he was home and one when he was away. Different shows and dinners given over to our restless, eager hearts. Behind every word, every look on my mother's face was that other self, the one she kept hidden, a ghost story all its own. This next one is about my experience growing up as a pastor's daughter in the Southern Baptist Church. This is of the body. In Baptist churches, there is no rosary to cling to, something to occupy hands, focus minds. We hold our anxieties close in our chest, say prayers silently, choose our own rough words. Still, I say we, although I am not of them anymore, standing on a different coast, wincing at the familiarity, songs that so casually drift through my head. Baptized in one church, married in another, memorized verses, ate of the body, ran through back corridors, felt at home. The hardest part of letting go is giving up that sense. It can be so easy to belong. My uncle leading my fading grandmother through the sinner's prayer, my aunt smiling at a funeral because no farewell feels final when you believe in forever. My father in tie and matching shirt that my mother ironed for him the night before, studying scribbled sermon notes in handwriting I could barely decipher. The billowing, clean white robe he wore for baptisms, water pulling the fabric out like flower petals caught in gentle tide. Hush before each hymn, slow turning of thin pages, so easy to rip and tear, pen marks of underlined verses showing through. Fidgeting in new pantyhose, a run down my back leg, shoe on the seat back in front of me, gray scuff marring black. Coins my mother pressed into my hand before the offering plate passed by. Clink of quarters that could have bought machine gum sent a bright pink orb twirling down into my waiting palm. My old world, the one that raised me, sheltered me, called me home. Permanent and predictable, familiar in its coldness, unending, unfailing. Glory, hallelujah, amen. A couple more here. This next one is called Loose Strings, and it's about the feeling of grief and just that feeling of when days kind of start to blend together. Loose strings. Everything feels like a metaphor these days. The binding of the book on my nightstand comes undone. Frail, hair-like strings, almost invisible, slipping loose. I pull one until it snaps and hangs past the spine, ruptured, a thread to worry. Too heavy-handed if I made it up, but reality isn't subtle sometimes. There's no artistry to it, just blunt imagery. Blank walls and found photos, and the way all the flowers are wind-beaten, off the backyard tree. It's only symbolism because my mind can think of nothing else, turning the same thoughts over and over until I have to reroute them. Snap the lights off each time they flicker on in that dark room. The door has no lock, but I can turn away each time my feet drag me to the threshold. I can avert my gaze. I can sigh and go in, but only so often, returning with red eyes and paler face, feeling like tissue paper. One good rainfall and I'm in pieces. And this last poem is called Remnants, kind of along the same lines as well. Remnants. We saw a dead bird on our walk the other day. A blue jay once, now a lump of blood and feathers. There's something exhausting about death and all its permutations. I never learned to accept it, only to see the end as yet another beginning, a land to be conquered. I come, after all, from a long line of thieves and murderers, more focused on the glory of victory than how it's seized. My dog sniffed the dead bird with curiosity, but I see every death as tragedy. Every squirrel crushed on the road, every deer corpse along the highway, each silent ambulance and plain obituary. I feel nothing casual. I grew up running from death, leaning all my weight into the hope of forever. But these days, eternity feels far more terrifying than quiet. The next day, the bird was gone, stolen by a stray cat, or cleaned up by the caretaker and his red truck, who knows. Only a spot of blood remained, dried and nearly blended into the concrete. Thank you.
Beautiful poetry with some really gorgeous imagery. Tell me about ghost stories, because there's more to that poem than just what is on the surface. It's the paradox of things that hide and things that are being hidden, and I think it's hilarious that the mother character did all the things that she was her most authentic self when the father was away.
Yeah.
And I know that it comes out in the poem, like that you saw who she was hiding behind her. So tell me about that poem, like what inspired it. um you know how did the narrator ping pong back and forth between the two characters, because
For
that's
sure.
the other story.
Yeah, obviously the inspiration is actually very genuine. My dad would go on work trips a lot when I was a kid, and we would just, do different things when he was gone, watch TV shows he didn't necessarily approve of, and go out to eat more. So it was kind of like a getaway. But ever since I was little, I know my mom has had a fascination with the supernatural. She's always told me stories she's heard from family or stuff she's experienced, about ghost stories. She's always been very in touch with her spiritual side in a way that's not strictly religious. So yeah, that was the big inspiration of it. And I would say even as I was writing it, I didn't quite know where it was going. I just wanted to explore that idea of living two lives, but the idea that, sometimes a ghost isn't necessarily, the spirit of someone who has died, but it's a different version of ourselves, or a different life we might have lived, or, just the way we show different faces to different people. And so I really like that idea of a ghost story as well.
Yeah, and that comes through very clearly, and that's why I really liked that poem a lot, because these days a lot of people are doing that. They're hiding their selves from each other and also their neighbors because it seems dangerous not to do so.
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially if you live in an area where your beliefs and political systems, belief systems aren't in tune with everybody else around you. So
Exactly. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
yeah, exactly. So Talk about the book as a whole. Like, how many poems are in it? How did you put it together? And talk about the process of getting all of these poems together into a book, and why the title.
For sure. Yeah, so when putting it together, I kind of looked at all the poetry I had written thus far, and just noticed a lot of the same themes. I was dealing with my deconstruction from religion and from leaving that world behind. I wrote a lot about my childhood, just growing up in the church and growing up as a pastor's daughter, and just how that impacted the way I viewed the world, even if I don't consider myself part of that world anymore. So I started out just kind of breaking the poems into different sections. I like to think of them as different parts of my identity. So the first section is called Missouri Girl. I grew up in Missouri. I lived there till I was 27. So that has played a huge role in who I am as a person. And so a lot of those poems deal not just with childhood, but also just with that environment, even in subtle ways, how the Midwest can be different from other parts of the country, and how that can impact who you become as a person. The second part I called Preacher's Daughter, just because that was probably the biggest part of my identity I was dealing with at the time, especially in the last few years, just figuring out where I stood on religion and spirituality, versus what I was raised with, what I grew up with. And I have a lot of friends who've gone through similar things. So just kind of taking those experiences and like processing them through verse. And then the final section is called Almost Mother, just kind of dealing with those feelings around preparing to be a mother and then not becoming a mother, and just processing that grief, which is very unique just because I like the life I have and I wouldn't have it necessarily if I was a parent, but also feeling that loss of something I thought I would be, but ended up not being. The title, Mother Viper, is actually one of the poems in that section. It's one of my favorite.
Do you want to read that one?
I can if you like.
We have plenty of time. Why don't
Yeah,
you read
for sure.
that one?
I gotta track it down. I still don't know where everything is. I've
Oh, I
rearranged.
totally understand that. I can
rearranged
tell
it
you
so
that my
many times.
daughter-in-law is a Baptist preacher's daughter, and you would never know it because she's so totally anti-religion at this point.
Yeah, that is something I get a lot from people, in my life now. They're like, I wouldn't have thought that that's a world you came from or knew a lot about. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that's a compliment that you can't tell anymore.
Yeah, she's raising my grandson without any religion. Which,
good for her.
what?
Good for her.
Yeah, but she's teaching him to be a kind and wonderful human being, just not with any organized religious background.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, so I'll read Mother Viper, which is
Okay.
where the title comes from.
Okay.
Autumn shrugs into view, closer skies, a slow and gentle dying. Stacks of Halloween decorations piled in the basement, probably cobwebbed for real now. I should have bought costumes. I should be sleepless, and I am sometimes, just not in the way I anticipated. Too many nights I stumble toward unconsciousness and feel afraid. Jolt myself awake in panic because I remember too well the feeling of a body that no longer feels familiar. It's rained all week, and normally I love the gray, the patter of drops against the aluminum siding, the way they echo like a song in the fireplace. But these days the sky feels too heavy, air too thick. I could suffocate on it, and the thought is deep and old, yanks me back to second grade and a baptism I didn't want, the water swallowing the light, a crowd of people below clapping, and me pressing my nose closed with the desperation of the dying. I don't have it in me to tell anyone there is no next time. I can't walk that road again, feel my body drift away, feel another body torn from mine, swollen and already gone. There is no cure. I'll let my days waste away, every poem touching the same bruise, pressing it. What is left but this? Who am I but this? Wrecked, weary, venomous as the day is long. I should be golden-eyed and wild, curled in wait. Instead, I watch the world pass, bare fangs at my own reflection.
What a beautiful, beautiful poem.
Thank
And
you.
also very profound.
Mm-hmm.
That had to be in the chapter of grief.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
And I think that the title is rather interesting because it does have this very like feminine rage, intense sound, but it is a poem about grief, and about feeling, less like a wild snake or a wild creature and more like something that has lived in captivity forever and has just kind of faded, which I thought was an interesting expression of grief.
Yeah, I mean, it comes out at an interesting time too, where women's rights are being assaulted, and there's a contingent, a very small minority of people who think women should only be bearers of the
Yeah.
next generation, without any nod or acknowledgement of any other aspect of our lives. So that's a very profound poem and sort of prescient, especially if you wrote it during the pandemic.
I did, yeah. That is actually quite an old one. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other poem that really struck me was the one about the friendships, the friendship that didn't make it. And I think all of us can relate to that. They say it's harder to lose a best friend or a friend than it is to lose a spouse. So can you talk about that poem, like what inspired it and how long it took you to write?
Yeah, that was definitely one where it was processing a very deep feeling. I do think losing a close friend is really difficult. Growing up in the church and in that community, I had a lot of friends whose views and opinions I didn't necessarily share. And I think the more I kind of, came into my own opinions and what I believed and realized it was different from what I had been raised with, the more strain that put on some of those friendships, even the close ones. I'm really grateful for, the people that have grown with me and that I've, been able to hang on and mend those friendships. But this poem in particular was about a friend who really just kind of silently slipped out of my life, after she found out I had an abortion, just because that was something she didn't think was fine and didn't think should be allowed. And she just never really talked to me about it. And so it was kind of processing that 7-year relationship, how close we had been. And, I talked to her every day and how much that was a part of my life. And just trying to find some of the positive in that. But yeah,
It leaves a hole.
It
And
does.
your poem actually talks about the whole, like your everything is great until you get those sharp edges within you.
Yeah.
That's a very sharp, or a very clear metaphor because it's painful, but it matches the sentiment of some people's views being so rigid that they're like the edges of tables or stones.
Exactly, yeah, and then there's not a lot of room for the softness or the changing that a real loving relationship requires. Yeah.
Well, they say the world runs on love and fear, and and I think you covered all of that in your book.
I think so.
Yeah, so let's talk about the writing process. Like, tell me what is your writing? What is your approach to writing? Do you write every day? Do you write it every day at a certain time? Do how do you incorporate the reading into writing and into your writing? What is your writing practice like?
Sure. I wish I had a more structured writing practice. That is not the case. I mean, I have a 9 to 5, and then I have like freelance work. I'm also a photographer, so I'm running around a lot of the time. Um, writing for me is kind of just like when it hits, and I wish the inspiration came more frequently, but that's not always the case. So I tend to I have a note on my phone that I just write lines or thoughts that come to me. Sometimes if I have like a big feeling to process, I will just like, free form write about it, just type whatever comes to mind. And then I usually go back later and then type that up into a Word document. And that process of writing it out again allows me to kind of see it more clearly, see it more as art instead of just my rambling thoughts, and think about what works and what doesn't, what images I would like to follow and expand on.
Mhm.
And then I kind of go through an editing process after that. And sometimes, many times, sometimes I like a poem when I first write it, and then I come back in a month and I hate it, and then I want to start over again. So it's an endless process.
Yeah, that's pretty much the writing life.
Yeah.
Um, so what other things do you do to support your work as a poet? Because a lot of writers have other art forms that they explore. You just said photography.
Yeah.
Some people do music or paint.
Mhm.
So plus we have to support ourselves because contrary to what people believe, books do not pay the bills.
They
They
really
actually
don't. It's for
they're
the
actually like
luxury.
children. They require money um to promote and stuff. So talk about um it sounds like you write all day actually with by putting your notes in the phone. But I forgot I forgot where the my original question was, but
Yeah, I think you asked about reading as well, so I can
yeah.
talk a little bit about that. I'm one of those people who's always reading like 4 or 5 books at one time. Um,
Mhm.
I always have a poetry collection I'm reading because I love to see what other poets are doing, and that's usually one I don't read straight through. I like keep it by the bed. I read a couple poems every once in a while, and put it away and just kind of sit with it for a while. I usually also try to read like a literary novel, something a little
Mhm.
more complex, and then also like a romance novel for fun, something light, something happy when you just need to be in a good mood, and usually like something nonfiction, and then like fantasy or sci-fi, just so I can kind of get a little bit of everything. I'm not really attached to one genre, so I like
Mhm.
to like taste a little bit of all of them and just mood read based on where I am in the moment.
I just heard there was a new genre coming out called romancery or something like that, but it is a melding of romance and fantasy.
Romantasy, yes.
Right, romantasy. Yeah,
Yeah,
romantasy.
yeah, that's very popular right now.
Yeah, that's what I hear. It's supposed to be really hot. Romantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at work because I also have a 9 to 5, and I saw my coworker who had like a fake tattoo on her arm of a dragon. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
said, "Oh, that's a really nice tattoo." And she said, "Oh, yes, I'm part of a romantasy book club." And we all got together and we all got these tattoos and we all had cake today. And I forget what book she was reading, but apparently it is hot right now.
Oh, I love that. I feel like a lot more people are reading right now, and I might be biased just because of like the circles I'm in online, but I see so many people talking about what they're reading, and it's very broad. It's romance, it's fantasy, it's a little of everything. So it's good to see. I feel like reading is very in.
I agree with you. Plus, I actually do believe reading is subversive and
Yeah,
reading is resistance because there's a lot of people out there who don't want to read and who don't read, and so reading is subversive, and I don't mind being subversive just by
exactly.
reading a book. Yeah. So, what are your future plans? Like, do you have another poetry book in the works? Do you also write prose, or other creative nonfiction or anything like that? So, is your writing work also as diverse as your reading?
Yeah, I wish it was more diverse, honestly. I've been working on a novel. I have a first draft of a novel, kind of literary fiction, like based in my experience, about like two adult sisters estranged from their parents who kind of go back at the end of one of their parents' lives, and deal with kind of what they grew up with, and facing that grief as well. And then I am working on another poetry collection. That's the thing about the publishing world, is this book has been finished for a couple of years. So I've already moved on to the next round, what it's going to be about, some of the newer poems I've published since then, and things like that. So there's always something.
Well, for someone who doesn't have a set writing time, you sure are productive and prolific. So, how do you explain that paradox where you are running around not writing a lot, but apparently you are? I think you're more disciplined than you think.
Yeah, I think that's the benefit of starting my writing on my phone, is that unfortunately I do always have my phone handy. So, I can be out grocery shopping, or I will wake up in the middle of the night and think of something, or have something from a dream, and I'll just jot it down so I don't forget it. But yeah, I think instead of having a set writing time, I've just kind of let writing permeate my whole life. I mean, it is my day job too. I work in marketing. And I also, write technical articles and stuff like that as well. So it's just kind of always been the thing I love to do, and I've made it my life.
I think a lot of writers out there will be able to relate to that. A lot of us have writing day jobs and just writing our poetry and fiction and not creative nonfiction, either at night or on the weekends, or both.
Whenever
so
you can.
A lot, yeah. So a lot of us. Do you have your book with you, by the way? Can you hold it up so that people could see it?
Yeah, I have it right here.
Yeah.
Please excuse all the Post-its.
Oh no, that's fine. Mother Viper has a red cover, and if you go onto Unsolicited Press's website and click on Year of the Woman, you would see all of the books that are coming out in 2025 are all have red covers because they're all written by women writers. Finally,
yeah, I love seeing them all together on the website. I love seeing all the red covers.
Yeah, and there's also I think the publisher offers a spiffy deal where you can sort of have a mini book. What is it when you order wine every month, and or fruit or something as a gift? You can actually get on a program where you can buy each book periodically, so that you'll have all of them. Yeah, so you can have all of them by the end of the year. So a lot of aspiring writers listen to our streamed readings, which take place every other Wednesday. So what advice would you give an aspiring writer, someone who's not yet published but who dreams about being published? What would you tell them? What would be the thing that you would say to them as your bit of hang in there kind of stuff?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is just do it and just keep going. It sounds so simple, but you're not going to get any better unless you keep trying. I mean, I've been writing essentially as long as I could write, but being around other writers and getting critiques, being able to think about your own work more critically was super helpful as well. So I recommend finding a group, whether that's a local group of other writers or whether that's friends online, where you can just kind of talk through each other's works, and being able to develop that thick skin and really critically look at your work and see where it could be better. That was a big thing for me in college and poetry writing workshops, being able to hear other people's thoughts, because we write in a vacuum, but nobody reads in a vacuum. So you need to hear what other people are seeing and feeling when they read your work, and to understand if you're expressing what you want to express, and learning to adjust there. But yeah, I would say keep trying. I really didn't start publishing until my late 20s. And it was just persistence. I would say I submitted a lot. You're going to get rejected. You're going to get rejected more than you get accepted, but you just have to keep going, keep revising, keep trying. Yeah, just don't be afraid to put yourself out there. That can be the scariest part.
Yeah, it is. So is Mother Viper your debut, or do you have other works that have been published?
It is my debut book. I've had
congratulations
individually. Yeah, thank you.
It's very hard to get a book of poetry published.
It
So I know
is.
you
Yeah,
faced a lot of rejection.
it does.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
congratulations to
Thank
you.
you.
Is there anything that you want to say about your work or about the writing life or about you know, how you approach your poems that I didn't ask you that you think would be important for people to know about your work?
Um, I feel like my work is very personal, and I think that's true of most writers. You know, even when you're writing fiction or when you're writing poetry from someone else's perspective. But I think the thing I'm most both nervous and excited about is just seeing how other people react to it. You know, seeing what resonates with people, what other people find meaning in, even if it's not necessarily the meaning I had in mind when I wrote it. I think my favorite thing about art is it's open to interpretation. So I'm most excited to see what other people get out of my work and you know kind of learn what other people think and feel and what sticks with them.
Well, hopefully some people who watch this, sometimes people will go back and watch things later, hopefully they will be inspired to go to Unsolicited Press or to Barnes and Noble or to Goodreads or to where books are sold everywhere and buy Mother Viper from Savannah Cooper.
Yeah, I hope so.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your work with us. I'd like to let everyone know that our next reading is August 6th. So if you want to join us on August 6th, that would be great. And don't forget to like on YouTube. If you hit the bell, you'll be notified when we're getting ready to go live. Thank you for sharing your wonderful poetry with us. It's going to stick with me for a long time. Thank everyone out there. Thank you, everyone out there, for listening and hanging in with us. And we will see you next time. Good night, everyone.
Hey, thank you for having me.